Hello everyone, how is it going? I'm just getting set up here, trying to get some errands done in the house, and then I learned, I gotta shoot some watches. I gotta talk to some people about some fun stuff I like. This is going to be a little bit different of an episode, just because I'm mixing in some watches that are a little bit older, a little bit more. Some of them are a little bit sentimental to me, and things like that. Here in Los Angeles, it is raining. It's kind of a rainy week. Makes it difficult because, in addition to not being allowed to go outside, you also don't want to go outside. Hello, watch aficionado. Just waiting for a few more people to join us here. Gathering some stuff up here. So I've been thinking about these episodes, and I think that we are going to go maybe about somewhere between about 20 and 25 episodes of the Watches at Home series. I think it's important for me to say that this does not represent my entire collection. There's lots of watches that I'm not showing, and there'll be some more that I show a little bit later. But afterwards, I'm still trying to figure out what I want to do. What I don't want to stop doing is having conversations with all of you. I might not be able to do it on a daily basis. It might not be necessarily in this format, but I'd love feedback from everyone about how you'd like for me to present Watch Talk to you. That's something which is definitely important. Thank you so much for all the really great feedback. Everyone's been so great, everything's people saying. Let's just take a look at some of the comments here. Just a bunch of them just blew in. First of all, hello from everyone. Let's see what's going on here. Hello from Tacoma. Hello, Australia. Yes, that is also big news, as everyone saw. I'm wearing my Garmin here. That Rolex and Tudor are probably not going to issue new watches in 2020. And that's something I really anticipated on. I really figured that they probably wouldn't do that, especially when I saw how quiet Rolex was during, the COVID-19 thing. There was no notices from them. Nobody knew anything. It was all very, very quiet. Oh, hello there from Phoenix. These companies are big traditionalists. And when I say they're traditionalists, what I'm trying to say is outside of the formal context of releasing at Baselworld, it's not that they can't do it digitally. It's just that they don't have any experience doing it, and they're very careful with everything. So that's something which I think is important to understand, that they haven't had the time to figure out how will we do it other than how we've always been doing it. Yes, people are noticing my Santos there. Yes, that is one of the older generation Santoses that I like a little bit better than the newer one. The new chronograph is really great. It's the Santos 100, and that actually represents it was made for the 100-year anniversary of the Santos. Oh, hello there from Detroit. So does anyone have any thoughts on maybe if Rolex will release new stuff in 2020, or do they feel like it's just going to be a wash? They've got plenty of watches to sell, plenty of demand. They don't really know what's going on with global demand overall. Do you think that they'll just wait until 2021? Oh, hello there, GMT Master from Toronto. Hello from Ohio. So Archie just ended his stream. You've come to see me. We didn't coordinate. Hello from Minneapolis. Rolex releases new colors, not models. That's not per se true. They definitely give them different numbers, and that makes it a different model. Let's see here. Patek and Rolex stay around because or keep Basel around. Basel might not. I don't know. Basel's got some issues. I just thank you. I'm just reading all the comments here. Okay, so let's start talking about watches. Okay, so I'm going to show you the watch that I wore all throughout high school. This is, people are asking me. I just found this thing. This is my Casio G-Shock that I wore during high school. And the thing is, as I went to take it out of where I was holding it, the little strap holder here just disintegrated. And I think it's actually quite important to say that if you've had older watches or you've stored watches for quite some time, it's not uncommon for things like plastics and rubbers to disintegrate. Rubber especially is something that I find over time does not in any way, shape, or form age equally. It does not, and this is not rubber, this is just resin. So Casio's used different ones over the years, but the piece right here just completely disintegrated. So I'm just looking at all these. So many comments today. People are very talkative. Very talkative. What about Omega? I mean, will they have more Speedmasters? Yes, probably. They can't control themselves. So again, yeah, so this is, I call this the pre-watch lover watch because I wore this. This was my daily wear pretty much every single day throughout high school. So everyone has not everyone, but a lot of people have their G-Shocks that they wore before they became into watch collectors. So that's this one. And then I'm going to show you, I found, this is the first ever analog watch that I ever wore. I bought this watch when I was 18 in Paris on the Champs-Élysées. I thought it was pretty sophisticated at the time. I went to Europe for a few weeks right after high school, and part of that was in Paris. And this was maybe a week or two after my 18th birthday, and I just strolled into a store. And I remember buying this. I remember haggling for it too. Like, I don't know what it was. At 18 years old, I just decided I should haggle a little bit. So they accepted my first offer. And yeah, isn't that interesting, Crystal? The funny thing is that I have never actually seen this Citizen watch. This is actually one of the Pro Masters. I've never seen this watch anywhere before. Anthony, I really appreciate the fact that you and some other people have offered to buy my watches. I, at least at this point in my life, don't need to sell any for financial reasons, and I happen to quite like it. So unless you're really interested in my watch, I think that it's going to be a really nice thing to buy one of the other available versions out there, because I think that you can still buy this watch out there. Glasuit de Original, yes, is a brand that's it's a nice one to have. So I agree, it's a desirable watch. People are mentioning Grand Seiko. Grand Seiko in about 2 days is going to be releasing their new for 2020 watches. Grand Seiko has a Zoom conference, which they're doing it. Maybe somebody will Zoom bomb it. That'll be funny. And it is going to be an important year because Grand Seiko is trying to be a serious global luxury brand. They're trying to basically be the Japanese version of Rolex, whatever that might be. And that's a whole other conversation unto itself. I could spend an hour talking about Grand Seiko and what all that means, but expect to see a lot of big investments in Grand Seiko. And remember how important Grand Seiko is for Seiko overall. Grand Seiko is, in a sense, the real savior of Seiko today. And the reason it's a savior of Seiko today is because the low-end market for Seiko, the volume business, where they were selling, inexpensive mechanical watches between $100 and $200, anywhere from, third world countries to department stores in North America, that business has dried up. So to save itself, Seiko has had to necessarily move up market. And it's a strange, dangerous thing to do, but that's what's essentially they are doing, is having to sell watches at a higher price point. To do that, they need to get away with getting better marketing, more sort of prestige from collectors, and sort of an ongoing effort. And Grand Seiko has come a long way in a few years, but they've also increased their prices a lot, and I'm not necessarily sure have increased their marketing. So I haven't put this watch on my wrist for a long time now, and I think by today's standards, I would consider it a little small for my wrist. But, it's just interesting that this is the first analog watch I got. I actually learned to read analog time. Not that I didn't know how, but at a glance from wearing this type of watch. And I wore this watch from when I was about 18 to about 21, because when I was 21, I started really getting into watches. And I still to this day have received more compliments from this watch than any watch I've had. Maybe it was the age I was at and it was in school, but again, even I've shown this watch to Citizen. They've also never even heard of it before. So this must have been some obscure model that I had found. But it's interesting that you have a watch that you just chose, and then you realize how strange it was. Yes, it needs a battery. that's a whole conversation. I don't want to say that Seiko is hurting. They're in fact doing quite better than the other brands, but that's not per se saying much. Seiko Prospex costs what GS used to cost a few years ago. Yes, Grand Seiko is moving way up market, and then Seiko is staggering themselves. So you have watches as various types of price points, from entry level all the way up to what is it, $6,000 right now, and then Grand Seiko is supposed to kick in the $3,000 to $4,000 range. Speaking of Seiko, this is a Seiko, also needs a battery. I believe that this is the first calculator watch. It's definitely the first Seiko calculator watch, and this was from I think the late 70s, I believe. And someone actually gave me this. They knew I liked watches, and they're like, "Hey, I got something for you." So I wasn't the original owner of this, but the original owner gave it to me, and it came with the stylus that you were supposed to put in your pocket protector, because a nerd would have this, and every nerd had a pocket protector. And the idea was that you needed to use the stylus to hit the little keys, because they were too difficult to hit with your fingers. So you would sit there and you would hit it with the stylus. You'd love to see a modern version of this bracelet. Well, funny enough, I was showing yesterday, I believe, the Timex Q that has sort of a similar one. And I have to say, this original one feels a lot better than some of the new ones. Like, this bracelet is anything but cheap. A lot of the newer versions of this are cheap, but you trust I'm not letting dead batteries sit in these watches? I remember we mentioned that I need an intern to come assist me so that I can come and take out all the batteries. So at some point, I'm going to have to find a lucky young guy in Los Angeles area to come by and save Ariel's old quartz watches. That's going to be the campaign. It's going to be save Ariel's old quartz watches. I'm trying to make this thing connect. And you have the pleasure of dissecting a bunch of quartz watches and removing the batteries and putting them into little baggies with the proper little tag on there. Sorry, this thing is... I've always hated these bracelets. Putting them... I feel like a moron trying to put it on. That's why when I got into watches, it was mostly the deployant class. You had a fold over deployant lock. Ah, there we go. So there is this Seiko calculator watch. Yeah, I can see designs like this coming back. It's a cool design. It looks nice. I love the fact that it's obviously, a rectangular case, but it has really soft edging on it. Honestly, not too bad. Not too bad at all. And eventually it'll come around to bringing stuff like this back. Right? This is neat. So this is, and there was, I think, I could be wrong, but I believe that this is the watch. This is the exact watch that was worn by Christopher Lloyd in Back to the Future 1 at the sort of one of the opening scenes in the mall parking lot. He actually is wearing two watches, and I believe if you look closely, this model is one of the watches that he's wearing in Back to the Future. Any Nomos? No, I don't have any Nomos watches myself. I think Nomos is a fine brand, but personally, they're not macho enough for me. Maybe that's just sort of my thing. But I like particularly masculine watches, and they're sort of like this subtle, German Bauhaus minimalism that, I don't know, it doesn't emotionally do it for me. I can appreciate the quality of them, the value proposition, they make sense, but emotionally, I don't really... Yeah, some of them are too small. It was definitely on SNL, the watch. Sorry, I'm just trying to get all the comments here. Yeah, so this is an old Seiko calculator watch, and it's really great. Let's moving on. Sorry, it's so difficult to go between all the comments on the watches. How do I like Movado? Well, I actually have two Movados here, so I'll show you. So this is the newest one, and this is a modern version of the museum dial. And I remember seeing these watches. Ristros, thank you so much. He just gave a little bit of money for the intern fund. So you know what? This is becoming a paid internship. Look at that. Look at that. So this is the modern version of the museum dial. This is actually the first museum dial I've had. And most of the museum dial watches, if you remember from the 1990s, were smaller and quartz. And I thought this is cool because this is one of the mechanical ones. So this is a 2824. And this is a watch that just recently came out, which is funny because watch lovers like completely forgot about Movado. So it was a guy named George Nathan Horwitz, I believe, who originally designed this dial. And it's an incredible tale, but Movado kind of stole it from him. And he sued them for years and years and years, and then they waited till he died, and then they settled with, I think, his estate. So Movado made out like a bandit. This is the watch that made Movado a bunch of money, and they never really officially paid for the dial. One of the original prototypes of the museum dial watch that Horwitz had made was produced by Vacheron Constantin, which is actually quite interesting. Neo has made even bigger contribution to the battery fund. Wow, this is getting, these watches, you know, it's going to go in a museum someday. So this one, I believe, is 42 millimeters wide. It's got that two-tone look. Obviously, you know, it's all steel in the bracelet. And the question I had for myself was, does this look that was so popular in the 1990s, does it have life today? I've always found the elegance of the dial to be, you know, quite real. I love the Dauphine hands. Reading it has never been a strong point. And I think today that actually means less than in the 1990s. Because in the 1990s, more people were relying on their watch to read the time. So I remember at the time thinking to myself, yeah, that's nice, but I wouldn't wear it because I can't read the time. Today, with everyone having a smartphone, well, this means all, you know, reading the time in your watch becomes, it's of course convenient, and I do it, but it's less crucial. It's less crucial. And this watch was, again, you know, a modern one. They've had so many different versions of the museum dial, the variations. The Bold collection was like the introductory level models. Yes, again, I'm going to shout out Neo for the battery runs. Well, again, the goal is I have an awful lot of quartz watches that need to be, you know, taken apart, the battery removed, and maybe you need to have like a little tiny brush to scrub away a little oxidation or the calcification or whatever could happen on some of those connectors. That would really, you know, be the icing on the cake there. Okay, so this is a newer Movado, and just going to my collection, oh, someone bought a Stop to Go, the Mondaine. You know, that's a funny thing. I was looking and I found my Stop to Go from Mondaine, and I wanted to talk about it, but the battery's dead, of course. And when the battery's dead in a Stop to Go, you really don't have any ability to see what it's all about. So the Stop to Go watch, essentially, it replicates the look of the train clocks in Switzerland. And what would happen is the seconds hand at 12 o'clock would stop. It would like wait 2 seconds and it would advance or something like that. It was kind of a neat system. Anyways, this is an older Movado that I want them to bring back in modern form. This was called the Gentry. And when this came out, again, this is small. This is 35 millimeters, I believe. But when this came out, it was really popular to have these I call them the checker watches because they were black and steel, or kind of black and white if you want to call it that, where they were really big on this contrast. And different brands were doing this, and I thought Movado did it quite nicely here. So again, this is called the Gentry. It was a quartz watch, and this version was my favorite. They made a bunch of the Gentrys, but I'll put it on here. What are my thoughts on the Breitling Tudor partnership? Well, as it's advanced, it looks less like a Breitling Tudor partnership and more like a Breitling Canisi partnership. So it's hard to say exactly what it is. But you know what? At the end of the day, it works. It helps both the brands. And if you have a Tudor movement and a Breitling watch, that's fine. If you have a Breitling movement, a Tudor watch, that's fine. It's sort of just like it's sort of like a net zero. Everybody wins, no one loses. Does anybody really gain? I don't know. Sorry, just looking at the comments here. Is this an Urban Gentry? Yeah, why not? Oh, is that the name of that account? Yeah, is that the same as that? Was it TGV? I can never keep track of these people. Yeah, isn't this bracelet great? And again, this is one of those watches that I acquired, you know, before I ever started aBlogtoWatch. So I think it's sort of interesting to show what I was into. This is definitely a pre-aBlogtoWatch acquisition. And I don't know that this is large enough to wear today, but I thought there's merit to this. Unfortunately, the bezel didn't turn. But again, this is the Movado Gentry. I think you can still buy these things. There's a lot of these watches just available. Just no one knows to look for them. But again, I mean, this was it nearly 20 years ago now that I bought this? Okay, what else we got? Is it pre a blog to read? Yeah, it's pre me having a website about watches. Let's put it that way. Some gentlemen were asking for smaller watches, and that's sort of a little bit what I was looking at here. TGV, aka Rodent. Ooh, nice one. I don't know him, but if someone says that his aka Rodent, he must be a mousy fellow. I was told that he buys a lot of views, and that was pretty obvious to see. I don't know how true that is, but I guess that still goes on. People buying views a lot. Maybe that's easier to do on Instagram. I don't know how easy that is to do. You know, when social media came on board, several years ago, you started having this behavior where people were buying engagement, buying fans, buying followers, buying likes. And I of course, I think it goes without saying, I've never done that. Every element of aBlogtoWatch, channels and everything has been natural and organic. But it was a very strange thing where I had to feel like, oh, I'm competing with cheaters now, which is a tough thing to do. He works for Watchbox now. Doing what? So this is an Omega. This is an old DeVille, and this is a manually wound watch that again is a pre Ariel in the watch industry watch. This wasn't the original strap. Actually, remember the original strap was this like pretty god awful black thing, and this is one of the rare instances where I just like went to a watch store, because again, this is pre me being in the watch industry, and just having the experience of buying an aftermarket strap at a store, seeing what they recommended, seeing what was in it. It was actually a nice experience, and I've never had it since. And these days, if you buy a strap, most of the time, what are you doing? You're buying a strap online, and you don't really know what it's going to look like. Again, this would probably be considered women's size today, but I liked it. I always thought it was very attractive. I understand that watches like this are not very expensive these days, but here it is. This is a nice little vintage Omega DeVille. Just thought I'd show some of the watches I had. Again, I wouldn't necessarily wear these today because of the size. What else do I got here? Some of these I actually inherited, but I'll go to that later. Oh, so I was talking about Xemex the other day, and I actually had a different Xemex model, which was the chronograph. This is the Xemex Off-Road. This is the quartz version. Again, this is another pre-aBlogtoWatch, aBlogtoRead design. The designer of this brand is called Rudy Kuling, and look at the little articulating lugs there. This actually came in a mechanical form, but at the time I bought this, I was in college, and I was, in college, poor, so buying mechanical watches was like a big deal for me. So buying quartz, you could get them at a better value, and you still had at the time available online a lot of higher end quartz things. So again, this watch is a little bit small by today's standards for me, or maybe again I just don't wear enough formal attire. Again, if you're wearing long sleeves, you can rewrite the rules there. The rules of watch case size change dramatically if you're wearing sleeves or not. So that's the off-road. I've always had such an incredible soft spot for whatever this design is. I call it like neo Bauhaus. What would you call this? How would you refer to this type of design aesthetic? I call it neo Bauhaus. I remember first seeing Xemex in a watch store, probably in a mall when I was in high school, and my eyes were just immediately drawn to it. I really loved it, and then several years after that, I bought my first one, and this is my first Xemex, and it definitely fits my taste because it's a very attractive and legible tool, but it doesn't look like other watches. And to this day, I still love any watch that has this sort of big, fat, arrow-style hour hand. What watches get the most attention you wear besides obvious big brands? Look, honestly, I don't think it's big brands that most people notice. When it comes down to it, color, material, things like that are going to be more prominent to like average people, mainstream people than brands. Brands are only recognizable by the shape, So this is a great example. Like you can tell what this watch is easily across the room. You don't need to have any particular type of good eyes to be like, is that a Cartier? This screams Cartier across the room. And in a sense, it works like color, like Tiffany blue, you can see across the room. The Audemars Piguet Royal Oak works well because you can see it across the room. The Datejust and things like that work well because you can see them across the room. Look, okay, I'm going to mention something here. Neo asked about the Fortis Canisi partnership. Do I see real value by Fortis using their movements? We just received some watches from Fortis, some new ones, and I'm going to be, writing about them in the weeks or months to come. And they're nice, but I have to say, if you didn't know that there was a different movement in there, it doesn't change anything. It just doesn't change a thing. So I get excited when a movement does something different, has a new piece of functionality, maybe offers some exciting performance. But if it's just like a three-hand that tells the time or a chronograph or whatever, it doesn't really matter. Remember, the context isn't that, it's supposed to be like an upgrade. The context is Fortis and a lot of other watch companies have no idea where to get their movements from right now. And they say, like, who can they buy movements from? There's more companies now than ever to buy movements from. It used to just be Etta, and then Sellita came in the game, and Soprod was always there, and then Boucher started doing more, and then STP, and you still have Canisi, and then you have Boucher. You have so many different companies out there, and their prices are different. Most of them want to charge as much as possible. So the Sellitas of the world, Eternas and things like that, trying to offer, there's everything from Etta clones to individually designed movements. It runs the gamut. And what I say is, I would not pay a hefty premium just because something has an exclusive movement or something like that. That's a nice movement or an exclusive movement for me is like icing on the cake. I still judge the watch by what's on the outside more than what's on the inside. Oh, hey, Michael. I'm so glad that you like this series. Have I ever bought a Grand Seiko? Of course. There's actually, in modern times, there's a relatively small number of brands that I'm like, yeah, I'd put my money in that. There's like independents that I would because they're fun, but when it comes to mainstream brands, there's actually very few that I would put my money into. And Seiko Grand Seiko is a company that I definitely put my money into a few times. What's the size of the Santos? That's a good question. I definitely have it in my article. A square watch is always going to be deceptively large. So I think this one is about 39 millimeters wide, even though it's taller and thicker and looks massive. One of the things that I want to mention was special about this particular Santos 100 is that there was very few models made that had the matching bracelet. This bracelet is was mostly available on the smaller diameter watches, the Galby, for example, which is for women or men that want a smaller watch. So you really like this? Ariel's not trying to sell me a watch. Who is trying to sell you a watch, Running Dad? I don't know. I'm trying to sell watches. I'm not trying to get anyone to like or want any one particular watch. But it's true. I definitely have a motivation to make you as addicted as I am to this hobby. It's lonely just being here alone liking watches, so I need you to be all in this with me together so I don't feel as lonely about my addiction. So again, the Santos 100 came in a lot of different forms. Most of this version, which is two-tone with the yellow gold bezel, had a brown strap, which was really nice, but as a bracelet guy, I had to find one of these, and it took me quite a long time to find one of these watches that was in good condition, and I really love them. Anthony's buying a Speedmaster Apollo 11th 50th anniversary day. Well, that's good. That's great. Clasp called? What do you mean clasp called? And the butterfly clasp, I think what's interesting is the modern generation Santos on the bracelet doesn't have this crazy looking clasp, which was meant to mimic this. So this is my favorite generation of the modern Santos. Is there still the actual blue sapphire as opposed to the spinel cabochon? I'm just looking at all these comments here. Yeah, this is again one of my. I actually like Cartier a lot. There's multiple of their watches that I would own. And yes, someone's pointing out that the newest Santos has the date. I like that this one doesn't. This just has an ETA. I think it's a 2892 in there. And you know what? I'm happy with that. It's a solid movement. Nothing's going to go wrong with it. If someone said you can choose this watch with like a delicately made in-house movement, I'd probably say no thanks. Proper alternative, the Aquanaut. Why don't you tell me? Jesse's asking that. What are you asking? I don't like the concept necessarily of alternate. What is it that you like about in that watch that you want in something else, because I don't think what you want me to say is this watch looks like that other watch. Be more specific on what theme you are trying to get in a timepiece. Here's another Seiko. This is a Seiko from, I don't know, the 60s or 70s. And it's, you know, they had a bazillion different lines there. So this is the Seiko-matic. And look at that little integrated crown there. I've never quite seen anything like that, but they wanted to have a crownless look. So they just had a little tiny crown in there. Which, again, you think, oh, well, what's the point? You can't even wind it. Well, remember, this is the Seiko-matic. And at the time, they were trying to emphasize the fact that it was automatic. You didn't need to wind it. So, like, all those other watches had this big crown sticking out of the side. And Seiko is advertising, oh, but you can be so much more elegant. I don't know why they would have a French accent. They're Japanese. But you can be so much more elegant and have a watch that doesn't need to have this ugly thing on the side. It can just be here, discreet for when you need to adjust the time. Looks like a Marlin. Look, all these watches from this era more or less look the same, okay? You know, they were all copying one another. But actually, one of the reasons I like this automatic watch is that even though it's older, it's not too narrow in size. I have no idea if this is the original strap. It seems odd that this would be the original strap, like a padded strap. I think I may have inherited this watch. I don't even know who actually owned this. Like, you know, when my father passed away, I you know, looking through stuff, I found a bunch of watches. And so this was owned by someone in my family. I'd like to know who it was, to be honest. I don't know who wore this watch. But this is, you know, it's attractive, and, you know, someone in my family's history wore this and went to meetings, and this was probably, you know, this was probably a pretty respectable watch at the time. And I love talking to people about the 1960s and 70s and 80s when Seiko was a very interesting alternative to Swiss watches, and people that chose Seikos were a lot like people that later chose Omegas and things like that, because it was an attractive, well-made, but sort of utilitarian timepiece. Jeremy Dean said this series has encouraged you to purchase 2 watches this week. That's great. I mean, I think everyone, you know, being at home, this is a wonderful opportunity to buy watches. There's deals to be had out there. I, of course, wouldn't encourage anyone to overextend themselves right now. How often do you wear vintage watches over modern models? Well, I never leave the house with something that's like, you know, pre-1990s on my wrist. I have some watches, but look, I'm just not really interested. It's like, this watch is lovely, but it's not my style. If you know, like, the way Ariel Adams dresses and things like that, you'd be like, that doesn't really fit him too much. This might be a little bit more my style today. So I really sort of, I'm a short sleeve guy. I like dressing casually. I like dressing a little sporty. I'm active. And something like this is like a suit watch. The show is saving the watch industry. That's very kind of you. And the watch industry fails regardless, and then I feel really bad. Is Ariel a watch snob? Proudly so. Proudly so. Here's another 36 millimeter wide watch. This is the white dialed version of the Quartz MSAR. That's the Marathon Search and Rescue, and this is the Quartz version. There is a mechanical version of this coming up soon. It's going to be the same watch. They're going to remove the M on the dial. I didn't want to say anything about that because it's still, like, technically under embargo, but I went to the Marathon website yesterday, and there it is. You can't buy it, but the mechanical version of this is going to be available soon, and it's a killer. It's really a great watch. What they did is that this was an experiment for Marathon to put the graphical M logo there. And what they did on the mechanical version is they just took it off the dial and they put it right here on the bracelet deployment, which I think makes more sense. So this watch with the white dial is going to come out pretty soon. You're going to see the debut on aBlogtoWatch. It's really a nice timepiece. 36 millimeters with the SW200. This is the Quartz version, but just telling you that a white dialed 36 millimeter Marathon's coming out soon, which is quite nice. Just catching up on some comments here. Do any other watches beside Rolex hold their value? Jay asks. And the answer is maybe. Maybe. I'm not trying to be coy, but that's really the answer. Yeah, this, and especially since it's like tall, so you put this on your wrist, and you know, given the thickness of it, I don't know, this wears a little bit in the same way that a Rolex Datejust. A 36 millimeter Datejust does not feel like a 36 millimeter watch, and it feels larger if you've worn them. And this watch sort of wears the same way. White dialed 42 millimeter, it'll come. It's marathon. I got to do one step at a time. I like marathon too. I say, you know, I have really mostly positive things to say about them. A tritium insert in the loom, yeah, they'll get there. They certainly have enough depth for it, right? They could do crazy stuff there. But remember, every single time Marathon changes something, it's complicated because these are watches that are certified for military use, and they have very exacting standards, and sometimes their standards need to be updated. But just a change, like putting a tritium tube in here, could make them not fit the standard. So sometimes when you see why Marathon does this or that, it's less about, you know, them not wanting to do it, more about making sure that they can serve some of their primary clients, which are the military clients. And I was just, again, wanted to compare the sizes. This is the just under 38 millimeter wide Citizen Caliber 0100. And just because I'm, you know, wearing all these watches, just comparing for sizes and things like this. This, again, is the most accurate autonomous watch in the world. The movement runs, the frequency of the quartz movement here is 8 megahertz. So by comparison, your standard quartz movement is about just under 33,000 hertz. So 8 megahertz up from 30,000 is a lot. And that is part of why it is able to get that 1 second per year accuracy. Such a cool watch. No tritium watches on submarines. Is that really a thing? I didn't know that. I guess I can imagine why. Potential radiation. Look, people are talking about holding value. I sympathize. Watches are expensive, and you want to make sure they hold value in case you need to sell them. But the sad thing is that watches don't really work that way. It's like cars or clothing. You probably are not wisest purchasing them with the belief that they will increase in value or be able to sell for exactly what you bought them. I mean, imagine buying like a $100,000 car and then 5 years later wanting to sell it for $95,000 or more than $100,000. Everybody would laugh at you. And so there's been this movement amongst mostly unscrupulous people, to be honest, that have positioned watches as quasi-financial instruments, and they've suggested investing in them. But I'm going to tell you something. The people that suggest you, quote-unquote, invest in a watch have an interest in you buying the watch and maybe later reselling it. Auction houses, for example, are incentivized to have what I call the revolving door of watches. They want person A to buy the watch. They get the fees from both the seller and the buyer, the premium. And then they want to say, oh, buyer, why don't 3 years later you put this back up and maybe you'll get more for it? It doesn't actually matter if the amount of money for the watch goes up or down. The auction house wins because they, once again, get that buyer and seller premium. eBay, for example, has a much more affordable system. And so I find it kind of unethical that a lot of these auction houses are really in it for themselves and discreetly charge really high premiums. Some of them offer 25% buyer's premium and a 25% seller's premium. I mean, they're making out like bandits. It's really unethical and really unfair. And I don't like that you have to pay all these hidden fees and things like that for getting watches. And like I said, they want the same watches to come in, come out, come in, come out, because they make money on the fees every single time. And so it's important for me to express that I worry about a lot of their integrity, and I don't always think the best values are there. I think that auctions make the most sense for watches that are truly unique, like really old things that you can't get anywhere else, one-of-a-kind masterpieces and stuff like that. But if you see a watch that is available, like for sale other places and it's on auction, or it's a brand new watch, I would recommend just don't participate in that. Auctions are kind of like entertainment for very, very wealthy people that just don't know what to do with their money, and it's entertainment. Maybe, it's not to say they're wealthy and don't know what to do with their money. It's the entertainment is in bidding. It's in the pissing contest. It's I can have it, you can't. It's not a way to get a good value on a watch. And the way that auction houses have tried to market themselves for the mainstream that doesn't have quote unquote money to piss away is, well, yeah, you're spending a lot of money, but it's an investment and you can make more a few years down the line. Like, that's just a failing argument. So I don't want to like dash anyone's dreams or anything like that, but that's really the summation of my feeling about auction houses. Sorry for that little rant. Now I have to read back a bunch of comments. So you're talking about the Hoptroff watch that had the 1 second a year, as well as the Bathurst. That was not an autonomous watch. It actually had what they call a chip-sized atomic clock in it, which is this little unit which was like, I don't know, it was kind of big, and so it had an atomic clock in it, which meaning the movement was getting a signal from somewhere else. So yes, that one's technically about the same accuracy, but it has an atomic clock inside of it. It's complicated. This is a much more elegant solution, and one that fits in. Look, a nice little wristwatch. That Hoptroff one you're talking about, look at pictures of it. Look to see if it's even wearable. Sorry, I've been holding this Tissot. This is a gold Tissot from the early 60s. This is another one that I inherited. This thing's 14 karat. This is just one of the most beautiful watches that I have that's sort of vintage. And if you were like into vintage watches and you like stuff like this, I could get it. Oh, you're talking about the lower end Hoptroff ones. I have to look at those models to see. The only Hoptroff models I knew of ultra accuracy were the atomic ones. So I'll have to go ahead and check those out. Someone on the team actually made the strap for me because this watch didn't have a strap. Let's figure it out there. So this is a vintage Tissot. I really wish Tissot made stuff like this today. You know, you talk about cleanliness on the dial, no date. Does it get better than that? I really don't think it does. Like, that's all you need, right? That's really all you need on the dial there. Hamilton Broadway chronograph? Okay, that's fine, I guess. Don't have a strong feeling about it. Oh, you're welcome, Albert from Adelaide. Look what happened to the housing market. Sorry, I'm just trying to catch up here on a lot of the comments. Oh, the Giuliano Mazzulli watches. I don't. I love those. Like the one made out of marble. You know, that guy's entire operation got shut down. Someone went to his workshop. This is Manometro. I think that was the name of the model. And Giuliano Mazzulli, his workshop got robbed a few months ago. So his entire operation went away because his workshop in Italy got robbed and they stole all of his stuff. Do I think watches will launch new watches if they have canceled Bosley, or just wait till next year? Well, Jesse, that's a good question. I mean, we started this conversation by talking about the announcement that Rolex and Tudor, along with Patek Philippe, simply are not releasing new watches this year. Patek definitely isn't. Rolex, so I got the email from Rolex today myself. They sent it to me. And they didn't say when they're releasing new stuff. They just simply made it clear that they don't have plans to release anything right now. And when they do release it, they're not necessarily sure what form it will be. They don't... Look, I mean, Patek and Rolex are currently in talks with Baselworld. There's so much going on in the air right now, so much up in the air that it's just unclear to know a lot of this information. Rolex needs to first make sure, before anything, that its stores are open. Rolex is heavily, heavily invested in the success of its authorized dealers. For good reason, because its authorized dealers spend the money that Rolex uses to make the production runs. So if you don't have stores open, you don't have people going in and buying watches, you lack the ability for Rolex to feel like there's any business to actually be done. Could you wear a different watch for every day of the year? Yeah, I could. The new Tissot Gentleman. I just don't like the idea of a watch called the Gentleman. It like literally sounds like it's meant for someone who doesn't like know that gentleman is just a basic word. Rolex didn't even release anything last year. Oh, that's not fair. Please donate to the charity known as Rolex. Okay, that's a little bit of a misunderstanding. There will be watches that are released. Like I said, Grand Seiko is doing a Zoom conference. Yeah, that's a Breitling Super Ocean. Some of these watches I've talked about before, but people ask about them, so I bring them back so you can see them, or I'll just leave them on the table a little bit. This is the 42 millimeter wide version of the Super Ocean Heritage 2, and this one has that Tudor movement, ceramic bezel. You know, I wore this for a long time. I still really, really like it a lot. It's a great daily wear, but I prefer the hands on the Super Ocean Heritage that came before this. Slightly simpler hands. These ones actually do look like one on a vintage model, so they're still Breitling authentic. But that bisected hour hand, and it's actually funny because, you know, I was saying I really love Aero style hour hands. You know, so imagine like a nice handset like this being used today. Look at that contrast, just amazing contrast. We were talking yesterday about watches with luminance that the hands themselves are black and how they sort of, you know, sink into the dial and you can't see them. These watches have white luminant but are also white tipped. And look at that amazing look on the dial. Why can't you have that in more modern style pilot watches? I was actually thinking about doing an episode of just pilot watches. In fact, that's what I'm probably going to be doing after these watches at home with Ariel Adams episodes, is do little collections where it's like, oh, let me look at some two-tone watches today, or some chronographs, or some GMTs. The mesh bracelet is great. Yes, it is. Is the Breitling much nicer than an Oris? Do you need a Breitling? I don't know that you need any watch, but it is true that Oris is not going to be as expensive a brand as Breitling, and accordingly, you get what you pay for. So Oris is a great watch, but if you compare your average Oris with your average Breitling, you'll agree that the Breitling is a nicer watch, but, you know, priced accordingly. I have Oris watches. I like them. People get on this sort of like kick about what's better, this one versus this one, and I'm like, well, I have Breitling and Oris in my collection, so for me, I don't want to have to choose. I like to have both. I don't think that people have to have brand affiliations like that, or that type of affinity where you like have to choose one or the other. I think that a good goal for everyone is to experience as many watches as you can. So buy what you can afford, and if you can afford the Oris today, that's great. Maybe tomorrow you'll trade up for a Breitling, or you'll be able to afford another one. But buy what you're comfortable with. And if you know what, if you feel that when you look at that Oris, you're just going to be sitting there thinking, I wish it was the Breitling, don't buy it. Buy a watch that is satisfying unto itself. I do not recommend buying watches because it was like the second option. If your budget is like, let's say $3,000, your money can go very far for $3,000. You don't need to get the budget version of a $7,000 or $8,000 watch. That's my spiel on that. What's the latest? Is everything good? Well, yes. Thank you for asking. I'm doing a YouTube live session right now, talking to some of the aBlogtoWatch community about my collection and timepieces. That's what's up with me. What's up with you, Beauty of Sense? The comments have actually been increasing in volume here, so I sort of just scroll back here to read what people are saying. Is the Super Ocean Heritage the only Breitling with a free-sprung balance? I don't know. That's a good question. I'm not really sure. Okay, I just said I don't want to do these versus things, and I get here Omega, Seamaster Planet Ocean, or Seamaster 300 versus Tudor GMT. These are very strange comparisons. Okay, so Dan says, I wish I kept my Texas Instruments watch red display. Yes, you should have. And then Anthony says, if I buy a watch, I never plan on selling it. Those two comments work together to help me stress a point, which I think is important. No one has ever said this comment to me. Not one time. I regret buying that watch. But you know what I hear all the time from people? I regret selling that watch. I hear that all the time. I've also never heard, I think that was a good decision to sell that watch. So I'm not telling people don't sell your watches. All I'm saying is, again, I've never heard anyone regret buying a watch, and I've definitely heard people regret selling a watch. A gentleman told me a story one time. I I'm not going to mention his name, but he was a very serious watch lover, and his first nice watch was a Vacheron Constantin. And he bought it. I think he said he was in Italy. He bought it. He loved it. He argued with his wife about it because it was too much. Anyways, he wears this watch for a while. This is his VC. He loves this thing. And I think he said that it got stolen. It got stolen. You know, a tragedy, terrible situation. People get watches stolen, you know, in innocent situations, hotels or spas or gyms or things like that. It was a tragedy. Anyways, so this guy goes out and just buys the exact same watch over again. Like, he had an opportunity to buy something else, and he went out and bought the exact same watch again that he lost. So that's something which is also interesting, you know. So imagine if he like would have sold that one and then done something still like buy a new one over again, and have people have done that. I've actually seen people sell a watch and then a few years later miss it and then have to spend the money on a new one, sometimes more money to begin with. So someone on a different show called me the Mormon of watch collectors. I think that was funny because I was saying that you can be a polygamist. Get married to as many watches as you want. You know, stick them in a box and make them wait for 4 years before you want to give them attention. You can do that. That's fine. One Grail watch, what would it be? I love these superlatives. It's just, you know, choosing a favorite is an artificial construct. We don't really need to do it. Imagine it was like, okay, choose one food you have to eat every day for the rest of your life. Who has to make such decisions unless they're being severely punished? Choosing a favorite to me is a punishment. It's not like a joyful thing. So I prefer not to think about it. It makes me sad. Do I have any Archimedes? No, I don't. And actually, I like Archimedes and Limes, basically the same company, the German company. I have no idea what's going on with those guys, but that's by the Ickler family, and Ickler makes good watch cases. I've seen many videos of people rebuying watches. Okay, I didn't know that there were videos about that, but that makes sense. I guess I should mention this watch here. This is one of the latest Andersman watches. This is the third Andersman watch that I think I've reviewed. This is their bronze watch. And in an earlier episode of Downtime, I definitely showed one of the Andersman watches, and it was a little bit bigger. And this is the bronze watch with titanium and a nice display case back there. Let's see, what's the depth? This is the 1,000-meter diver. Such a schlub. Only 1,000 meters. The other one was 3,000 meters. But, 1,000 meters with a display case back, that's pretty nice. That's pretty nice. And in bronze, where is it? I was actually, you remember the Longio I wore the other day? I think I was actually wearing it. But that watch was about 6 or 7 years old, and it was interesting to see the patina. So when I see this bronze, and this is a pretty high quality bronze, I wonder what it's going to look like. I actually prefer bronze materials that do not patina. I believe that Tudor, actually, I could be wrong, but I believe that the bronze watches from Tudor are designed not to patina, which I like. Should you be worried that your automatic watches have not been worn for more than 1 to 2 months? Yeah, why are you not wearing any watches? That's what I'm worried about. Are you self-isolating at home because of a pandemic disease? What a weird thing. Yeah, wind them up every couple of years. Is it an alloy if there's no patina? Look, every bronze is essentially an alloy. Bronze is an alloy. 1,000 meters is pretty far down. Well, not when you could have 5,000 or 4,000 meters. Thoughts on more expensive G-Shocks as of late? I'll put it this way. Casio did not just increase their retail price to decide, we want to charge more for G-Shocks. They increased the value proposition a lot. Better materials, better screens, better technology, better overall everything. So the G-Shock today, the modern ones, is unlike the G-Shocks of yesterday, but Casio still sells both. So if you want to buy $100, $120, whatever G-Shock, you can. You can spend $200, $300, $400 on it, or you can spend $900 up to a few thousand to get something really spectacular. So Casio makes both of those types of G-Shocks available. And the ones that are more expensive have technologies, have materials, have construction and build quality. I mean, the best ones are produced in Japan. We wrote about that. At, I think, the Yamagacha factory. So we talked about that on aBlogtoWatch. I visited there, and they had this amazing laboratory setup where they made the higher end Casios. It included, other models like Oceanus. I just like saying that name. And the better G-Shocks and stuff like that. So those are put together like, you know, hand assembly in like a clean laboratory room. It was impressive. It was really impressive. You know, the type of attention to detail you can get in a watch that is, you know, under $1,000. The Swiss, for that type of treatment, you know, you're basically paying Rolex prices at that point. So it's hard to know these things from the outside, but there are the watches, the G-Shocks that are more simple, that are produced in Thailand, but that doesn't speak for all of them. So I think that G-Shock Master of G and up are going to be the ones that are produced for the most part in-house, you know, in Japan. And the other ones may be in Thailand or some other places. You dislike the Oceanus? How dare you? I just think the name is funny. They're actually nice watches, but it's funny that Oceanus is just a name that hasn't translated well other places. So I'm just trying to read all these just interesting things here. New G-Shock with a heartbeat monitor. Yeah, we're going to get some of those. Actually, what we're trying to do is really discover the functionality of these new generation of watches that are smart watches or have smartwatch style features. I mean, like a GMT complication. We all know what that is and how to live with it. There's nothing to be learned about how to use a GMT. But you take a watch like a G-Shock and all of a sudden you throw in a heart rate monitor in there. That's a new tool that we don't necessarily know what to do with. And we're skeptical of new tools that we don't know what to do with because we're not sure how to incorporate into our lives or what to do with it. So what I really find exciting about you know, the novel watches today, especially smart watches, is they're incorporating all these tools that we don't necessarily know what to do with, but that are exciting. This again is the Tiffany & Company CT60. A couple people said they really liked this one. I've been wearing this a lot, and you know, I find myself reviewing not only the looks of a watch, but I really review the comfort of a watch. And it's almost like, what does the watch feel like with your eyes closed? And this is a watch that when you wear it with your eyes closed is just, it's really nice. It's very comfortable. This bracelet, top comments on this bracelet. I mean, there's other bracelets that do more, but in terms of looks and style, it does a lot. This watch has just been very uniquely satisfying to me. And I don't know that I would have been able to predict that just by seeing the watch one time, or definitely not been able to predict that by seeing the watch just in pictures. I'm trying to see if there's anything else here I missed. Unless anyone wants to see anything again. If I see a Rolex, I think drug dealer. Oh, by the way, I'm going to say this to everyone right now. I am not going to include any Rolex watches in any of these episodes. I have Rolex watches. I'm not going to include any. So people are like, where's Rolex? Where's Rolex? I have made the personal decision that for the purposes of Downtime 2020, watches at home with Ariel Adams, I am not going to be mentioning Rolex. I mean, we talk about it, but I'm not going to be, you know, showing any. Let's see a GMT. All right, listen, I want to help you out, man. I do. I'm not holding back from you. I literally don't have as many GMTs as other people. I've had GMTs here. So you want to see the Movado again? You want to see the MTG? Oh, this one right here. There's my G-Shock MTG. I love this watch as well. Also super comfortable. And again, this is a watch I was very skeptical of. It doesn't look like it'd be comfortable. You know, you see the inside here, which is a resin material. Like, what's going on with that? This watch does not have the makings of a super comfortable watch until you put it on. You're like, uh-oh, it is. This watch is incredibly comfortable. No one has done a better job of making large watches comfortable than Casio. They absolutely get a prize for that. Absolutely get a prize for that. Where are your MVT watches? What is an MVT watch? You mean MVMT? Yeah, Rolex is just, it's over talked about. Yeah, Nouveau Riche, I'm seeing that. Is Indiglo and Seiko Lumibright are different things. Indiglo is a backlight system. It's not aluminum material. Indiglo is pretty amazing. Okay, so Jason wants to see this one. What is the watch on the NATO strap? This is the Vertex that is like unbelievably popular. People freaking love this watch. I mean, I'm so happy about that. But this, one of the weird things about the Vertex is that, remember when this, I don't think it applies to all models, but when this watch came out, this was a limited edition. I think this was called the M100. Wrist shot of the gloss suit. Yes, I will. This, I think it was this watch was limited and could only be purchased like by a referral, which is kind of an interesting thing. But yeah, this is a Vertex, a British brand. I quite like it. And even though this is a revival of an old British brand, it is, I think, the grandson or some type of family member of the original owner of Vertex that runs it today. Yeah, the gloss suit is nice. Andersman seems like a sleeper brand. Yes, we're going to try to promote them a little bit more because I like their stuff. Basically, because their watches are fun and well made. The brand is based out of Hong Kong. And the guy that started is a watch lover, and he basically said, this is what he started saying, is, I like Panerai, but I think Panerais are too expensive, and I want them to be a little bit more modern looking. And that's essentially the kickoff point for Andersman. That's what it was. And as you know, that particular region of the world is definitely a hotspot for Panerai collecting activity. And Panerai arguably took a little advantage of the market. I can't help but, recall those store window displays in Hong Kong off of Kimberley Road, for example, where you can see literally hundreds of unsold Panerai watches from over the years, every crazy rare model you can think of. They're all right there, needing a home. Movado, not Moldova? Different things, sir. Different things. The crow's foot means it tells the right time. Ever work on the movement of each one? Yeah, I have. I've played with movements. I showed the Frédéric Constant movement the other day that I assembled myself. Assembling a movement's not that hard. If you know what you're doing, it's not that hard. You have to do it the right order. You need to know how to use the tools. I've done all kinds of crazy things. What's the hardest thing I ever had to do? I helped assemble a tourbillon cage one time. That was kind of challenging. You know what's hard to do? Those anchors that have the two synthetic rubies in there? It kind of looks like this and it goes like this. So there's a synthetic ruby on each side. I have actually had to put those rubies in there, which, you have to do under a microscope. It's really a pain in the ass, but I've done little things like that. The brands just sometimes try to be like, oh, look how hard this is. And then I do it the first time and then they get embarrassed. Okay, yeah, I know. I'm really trying to promote my watchmaker skills. Now, I would be a terrible watchmaker because I'm impatient. I can do it, and I think my arms would get numb. They have, these people must have the most amazing circulation because they can sit there just barely moving for hours and be fine, and I'd have to get up and run around all the time. Yeah, it's very easy to read the time of this one. This is definitely an attractive watch. I love this thing. The 70 series, again, not a watch that looks that great off the wrist. Once you put it on the wrist, it takes on a new form. Okay, we are over our hour, gentlemen. We are over our hour. That means I have to bid you adieu. I cannot go on one of my hikes today because there's water coming outside from the sky. It's super weird in LA. I don't know what this is. Maybe it'll end tomorrow, but it's making mud where I can't go ahead and hike. So again, this has been another episode of Downtime 2020 with me, Ariel Adams. I'm going to do a few more of these episodes before I start to do something new, but think about how you might like to have us continue this conversation. I do like speaking with you. I do like having these conversations. I won't always have a table full of watches to talk about. Maybe it'll be here. Maybe it'll be on Instagram Live. I don't know. But give me your feedback on how you want to hear from me, how you want me to be part of your day. And thank you for everyone joining. I love all the comments. Thank you for the support. It means everything to me. Stay safe out there. Stay sane. Apparently, this is in America. This is the week to stay indoors. So maybe we're going to hit the peak of this COVID-19 thing soon. And I'm just waiting for the end date. I don't need the end date to happen, but I want to know May something, everyone will be able to go back to work again. I can't wait for that. I'm sure everyone else here feels a similar way. Okay, everyone, thank you so much. I will see you next time. Bye.